back. My name is Arin Nicole. I'm a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and I am the founder of Am Moonli. So welcome. Today we're going to be talking about how to reduce bloating. So I did basically this entire week on Instagram dedicated to educating about gut health. We did some Instagram stories, some Instagram posts. And this is kind of like where I officially put information. Because I love education, I sometimes go on a ramble when it comes to like the details, but I know you guys basically just want to know, okay, well, why does it happen? Short version, and then what can I do to deal with it? So we're gonna jump right into it. I have spent years dealing with bloating since I was about 6 years old. I've always had issues with dairy, which I didn't cut out until like 4 years ago. 8 p.m. I looked 8 months pregnant. It was hard to breathe. That's how bloated I was. Like, it was hard to actually breathe. It felt like there were needles in there poking and poking and poking, and it just sucked. I dealt with constipation, abdominal pain, all of these things, and everyone was just like, oh, you're fine, like, just good luck with everything. But none of it is actually normal. So bloating is gonna look different for every single person, and there are a variety of things that can cause bloating. So typically bloating just means anything where your belly extends to a point that becomes uncomfortable, painful. You might look like you're pregnant. Because the thing is, when we eat, there is a small amount of bloating that happens. You are literally putting weight into your body, but your body's also producing different types of acids to start breaking down these foods. So your body's gonna obviously extend a teeny bit, but it shouldn't be excessive. So some of the top causes of bloating, we're gonna start from the more general causes and the more complex causes. So some of the general causes could be things like low hydrochloric acid, and typically this is pretty easy to fix. So are you chewing your food? This is a massive one. We are in such a rush society. We've been taught to, like, even since we were kids, 30 minutes to eat, get it in, and then get back to work. Prioritize work over your body. That is literally what we've been raised in. But you actually want to make sure that you're chewing your food to a paste-like texture before you swallow it, because your body can break it down easier and get the nutrients and move it throughout. But when there are large chunks in there, if you have low hydrochloric acid, this can cause this. Your body can't break down the food as well as it can, and that's where it's moving larger chunks of food through your digestive system, which is the last thing that we want. Another thing is, which I just did a post on this week as well, eating heaps and heaps of raw food. Like, sure, have the occasional salad, raw capsicum or bell pepper, like, that's totally fine. But if you are eating lots of raw fruits and vegetables, especially due to the raw diet, I can't remember what it's called, if you are dealing with bloating, there's several reasons why. But yes, before humans had discovered cooking, everyone would have eaten things raw, but our bodies have developed to a point where we have the enzymes and the acids and the benefit of cooking our food, which can actually bring out more nutrients in a lot of fruits and vegetables. So I don't think a lot of people realize that when they're doing these diets. Is yes, there are some nutrients that can be destroyed by cooking, such as vitamin A and beef liver can be destroyed when cooking. However, there is a lot of nutrients that come out. For example, when you cook spinach, a lot more of the nutrients come out of that. So that's why we recommend cooking your fruit and veg, because it is easier for your body to break it down. Eating lots of processed food. So the occasional processed food is fine, but if you're eating a lot of donuts, cakes, packaged food, lots of white bread, white sugar, white pasta, your body's probably quite inflamed. That is a lot of junk food. Trust me, I grew up on McDonald's and Burger King and KFC, so I am the queen of gut inflammation. That could be a major role as well. Another issue could be you actually have food intolerances or allergies or sensitivities that you don't know about. That is a lot of us. A lot of us at least have one thing that we're sensitive to, allergic to, or intolerant to, and that can play out in a host of different ways. When we start talking about bacterial overgrowth, so our body actually has bacteria in it. Bacteria is incredible. That's why some people take probiotics. I take a probiotic. I recommend it to all of my clients because there is so much bacteria that is out of balance that we don't talk about. Our body is made up of a tremendous amount. But for example, when you're put on an antibiotic for, say, a parasite or a yeast infection or something along those lines, antibiotics save lives. So I'm not saying don't take your antibiotic. I just came off of an antibiotic, and so I'm not saying don't take it. Take it if you need it. When we take antibiotics, it kills off the good and bad bacteria. So yeah, it's good, making us feel better, but we still need to put that bacteria back. So when you don't have enough good bacteria, you might notice symptoms such as gassiness, bloating, abdominal pain, things like that. That can really make an impact on your gut health. Even for people with endometriosis, especially fibroids, a lot of the times we have high levels of beta-glucuronidase, which is an enzyme created from very abundant bacteria. And typically what happens with beta-glucuronidase is that our stool that we actually pass out as our poop should carry that estrogen out of our body. But if we are dealing with high levels of beta-glucuronidase or dealing with constipation, that estrogen is basically getting recycled back into our body, and that can contribute to things like SIBO and candida, but candida and SIBO can also contribute to that constipation, which is recycling all of this excess estrogen in the body. could also have underlying parasite. Yes, you can get a parasite in a developed country. I've had a host of parasites from the United States, from India, and even here in Australia. That's why I was recently on antibiotics, because I picked up a parasite in Australia when we were camping. Like, who would have thought? But here we are, and I had to take an antibiotic for 10 days to kill it. Some other issues to take into consideration as well that might be impacting. So for example, if you have SIBO, typically there's a reason you have SIBO, something else going on. So for example, a lot of people with endometriosis deal with candida, SIBO, digestive symptom issues. One, you could just have SIBO and candida, but two, they have found that when it comes to specifically SIBO, when we have endo tissue, it pulls on our organs. Essentially, it's pulling them in different ways, which means that our digestive system might not be able to work in a way that it should. And basically, as food starts to sit in different parts of our intestines, when we're talking about SIBO, it starts to ferment. Like, you know, when you're fermenting food, if you've never fermented food, essentially you are letting food sit and ferment on its own and create some bacteria. Well, that's what also happens in our gut. And if you have hypothyrodism, SIBO can also be very, very common, because typically your digestive system is slowed down. And when it's not moving the way that it should, it starts to ferment and it creates bacteria overgrowth in areas that we don't need it. So not all these bacteria in there that are overgrowing are bad. It just means they have become in excess, which thus throws those other good bacteria out of balance, and you start to notice things like gassiness and constipation, diarrhea. Another one that I recently just learned about that we'll talk about quickly is traumatic brain injuries. So there has been a massive connection between traumatic brain injuries and the gut, because there is a brain-gut health axis, basically. Whatever's going on in the gut is going to affect the brain, whatever's going on in the brain is going to affect the gut, and this has been found in tremendous amounts of research, which I won't go into too much detail today, but they have found that people with traumatic brain injuries can deal with things like SIBO, and while that is the true root cause of the SIBO, it is still good to address SIBO, because that's just adding extra symptoms that we don't want. Alrighty, so what are my top recommendations as a nutritionist to start reducing your bloating? Number one, chew your food to that paste-like texture every single bite. You know, aim for like 30 chews. I do not recommend counting, but getting your food down in a healthy manner. Do not swallow chunks of food. Don't eat too quickly. Two, reduce processed foods. I think this is pretty much a standard for every single person, even if you don't get bloating. Try to reduce your processed foods. Have more whole foods. Cook more of your foods at home. You know, have more fruit and vegetables. That is gonna help tremendously. Tip 3, if you are dealing with low hydrochloric acid, which a lot of us are, if you are dealing with low hydrochloric acid, two of the things I recommend is having lemon water before you eat, or you can also have apple cider vinegar in water before you eat. That can kind of help trigger the hydrochloric acid in the morning, which helps break down our food, and that is one of the very first parts, making sure that we get our nutrients and energy from our food, is good hydrochloric acid. So those are some of the things you can do. You can also supplement with hydrochloric acid as well. So another thing that can help reduce bloating is cook your fruit and veg. So obviously you've just heard me rant about this before, but literally our bodies have developed to a point where we can cook, and when we cook some of our foods, the nutrients actually comes out in better form, and it doesn't put as much strain on our body. But one of the biggest things I want to say that is, if you are dealing with something like SIBO, when you are eating fruit and veg, whether it is cooked or not cooked or anything very, very fibrous, if you notice that you get a lot of bloating just from cooked or non-cooked, you might be dealing with bacterial overgrowth, such as small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO. And that is a very common symptom. That's just because your body is having trouble with that fiber, and so you will want to correct the SIBO. But that leads us into, how do I get rid of the SIBO to help reduce my bloating? So when it comes to bacterial overgrowth, there is a general standard and protocol, which I actually include in my current course, Blooming Body Blueprint, to help people outline it. There's heaps in Blooming Body Blueprint, but I know a lot of women especially deal with those issues, so I wanted to put that in there. And so when it comes to the general idea of dealing with bacterial overgrowth, is you're gonna want to do an elimination diet, low FODMAP, and then you're gonna want to introduce supplements that can help balance out the gut microbiome and then bring down that bacterial overgrowth imbalance. Obviously you can't cure it, but you can definitely start to balance out your gut as much as you can. I was dealing with candida and SIBO, not formally diagnosed, but based off of symptoms like gassiness, belly bloat, and like weight gain. Weight gain can be really common for certain types of SIBO as well. So you will want to do these, and these are in my course, Bloating by Blueprint, which I will link. Parasites is another big thing. If you have parasites, you want to address the parasites prior to dealing with bacterial overgrowth. So some symptoms of the parasites you might notice are things like grinding teeth is a big one. You might notice that your digestive systems get a lot worse around the full moon and new moon. Why? They don't know. They've just found in the research that they're a lot more active during those times of the month. You might switch between constipation and diarrhea. Switching between constipation and diarrhea might also be SIBO. It could also be that you have both. You might also notice that your anus itches. That could be another sign of a parasite. But if you have a parasite, you will want to get testing done to make sure sure you have the right thing to kill it off. There is the GI stool map, which I think is absolutely incredible. And you can also get basic parasite testing at your local doctor as well, but just know that they might not be able to pick up all of the parasites through the general testing at your doctors. That's why the GI stool map and the oat test can be very, very helpful. And when it comes to things like those hypothyroids, endo, you want to come back to the root cause. So we know a lot of autoimmune diseases. I'm throwing hypothyroid in there, I'm throwing endo in there. Endometriosis is not an autoimmune disease, but a lot of the inflammation factors, I just throw it into the autoimmune disease factor because I find that with my clients and myself that a lot of the recommendations for autoimmune diseases work as well with endo. You're gonna want to figure out how you can start to support the gut. So one of my biggest things is get a good quality probiotic. When I mean quality, I mean it has more than 2 bacteria strains in it, and they're typically expensive. They're going to be found in dark bottles, and they're most likely going to be refrigerated. I know there's a lot today that are starting to say you don't have to refrigerate. I do still believe that the best ones are typically the ones in the fridge. I'll attach my favorite brands. I love Garden of Life Bioceuticals here in Australia. They're not cheap, but if you can't afford these and you are looking for another way to get more natural bacteria in there to balance out your gut microbiome, number one, make sure that you're still cooking your fruit and veg, eating anywhere from 6 to 10 veg a day, because that's going to help with fiber, which gives us prebiotics. Bacteria needs prebiotics to survive. So if you're not eating fruit and veg, it can't survive. So you want to make sure you're getting plenty of those in every single day. But you can also start fermenting your own things at home. And I actually have a few recipes in my short course, 28-day menstrual cycle and hormone restarter course, where you can actually start fermenting your own foods at home, which is so cheap because all you have to do is water, salt, and your fruits and your veg. Like that's it. Compared to most of the time when you buy this stuff at the store, it is not the cheapest. So you're gonna want to get, you know, homemade kimchi, homemade sauerkraut, kombucha, homemade coconut yogurt. I'll do a homemade coconut yogurt video if you guys want. These are some of the things that I do. And when it comes to homemade coconut yogurt, you will need at least a probiotic to start it. But then after that month, you don't have to go back out and buy it. You can just keep using that coconut yogurt if you want. And obviously for those root cause cases, you got to figure out what is the root cause. You know, endometriosis, most of the time when you help repair the gut, that helps reduce the symptoms. Hypothyroid is similar. HPA axis, you know, focusing on what's going on with the HPA axis, blood sugar and digestion is simply helpful. If you're obviously dealing with a traumatic brain injury and dealing with SIBO, getting SIBO under control can help deal with those symptoms, but you'll still want to work with a neurologist to help, you know, whatever's going on with your traumatic brain injury. All right, well, I don't want this video to be too long, but I hope this video was helpful. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. If you enjoyed this video, comment below, you know, like if you really enjoyed it. I love doing this type of work, and we're gonna be doing this more on my Instagram and YouTube, like partnering them together. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe for future videos. So thanks so much for visiting, and I hope you all have a good rest of your week. Talk soon. Bye.